In today's episode, I'm interviewing Chrystal Cuellar. She's an alcohol-free coach who empowers women to embrace an alcohol-free life and find their purpose. I'm excited about our conversation today because we get to compare our experiences as alcohol-free coaches in witnessing transformation, in understanding what it takes to stay the course, and in identifying resistances to getting the help they need to change their relationship with alcohol. Let's listen in. Welcome, Chrystal. It is so good to have you here. This is the first interview I've done with a fellow alcohol-free coach.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about what we as fellow alcohol-free coaches see how common it is. That we haven't practiced this, but
Yes.
pretty sure that we're going to find the same answers. But first, can you give us just a brief background to how you found yourself where you are today as it relates to alcohol? And just by the way, for those listening, Chrystal is about 3 decades younger than me. So this is I love kind of seeing where this conversation is going to go. I wish I had realized these things back when. So let us
Yeah.
know a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gosh, let me put it in a nutshell, like we talked about, right? So, I used to be a huge binge drinker. And so, I was never somebody that was physically addicted, or I didn't drink every single day. But when I would go and drink, it was always from 0 to 100. I was never the person that would be like, oh, yeah, let's just have a drink and, just chill out. No, when I drank, I was going to get tipsy, and I was essentially, chasing that feeling. And of course, that just led to being drunk and making bad decisions. Relationships got affected. Obviously, I had those negative repercussions of drinking. And so I did that for quite a while, maybe, I don't know, 10 years. And, a lot of the people that I was hanging out with that time, obviously, they were binge drinkers as well. And for so long, I really didn't realize that it was a bad thing. I thought that a lot of people, that was just like the normal, which in a sense, it kind of is. Like, I feel like we definitely have more of a sobriety movement happening now. But at that point, I just thought, okay, like there's nothing wrong. It's fine. And so as the years went by and I kept drinking like that, I actually got involved into in a relationship, and we were together for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was already, kind of questioning my relationship with alcohol. And I would go on small breaks, like maybe 3 months or maybe a few weeks, but I would always go back to the binge drinking cycle. And so actually funny, when I met him, I was actually on a break from alcohol. And slowly after I met him, I actually started drinking again. And that relationship turned to be really toxic. And that's when I really started to realize I was using alcohol to cope. And, found my relationship with Christ in the midst of all that. Finally left the relationship, left alcohol. And fast forward to today, I've been over 5 years sober. And God has just really led me to essentially, using my mess or my message and really just coaching women on what God has, helped me with and what my mentors have helped me with and just what I've learned, up until this point with my sobriety journey. So,
Yeah, and I do our stories intersect very much
yes,
so. And in terms of I never drank unless it was to get drunk, which is
yeah,
clearly not biblical. I
right.
found Christ in the middle of a toxic relationship. Unfortunately, it was my marriage, a man who I just love dearly. And
Mm.
yeah, and so I'm excited to start here. So
Yeah.
again, fellow coach, and I know that you and I both find resistance with this particular topic. And since we're
Mhm.
coaches, we don't work for free. We have
Right.
to make a living.
Yeah.
Um, but what do you think coaching provides, first of all? Why
Mhm.
do you think coaching is important with this particular topic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for the women that I serve, they're very much like myself, right? They're in this in between stage where, a lot of people will say gray area drinking or whatever label you want to put it on it. But I just say it's in this in between stage where they're not necessarily an alcoholic, but they're still questioning their relationship with alcohol, right? It's still affecting them in a negative way. And so I feel like there's not enough support in this particular area. I feel like there is AA, there is different things like that for, somebody that would consider themselves physically addicted. But what I've really found to be true is that a lot of people don't really have mentorship or somewhere to go when it comes to this in between stage. And also, and obviously, I'm just speaking from like the clients that I serve, they don't really resonate with being an alcoholic. And so they just feel like they should be able to do it on their own, which is totally not the case because I know that I had to get mentorship and support. And so I feel like as coaches, what we get to do is we get to come in, fill in that gap, help shift their perspective, right? Help them with their mindset shifts, help them really get plugged back into Christ and really help them what I like to say is break through that threshold, right? Because most people that come to me is they can go days, they can go months without drinking, but it's like they end up falling back into that threshold. And I really feel like that's where mentorship and coaching comes in.
Yeah, I agree. It makes a big difference. And I love our messaging is very similar in that regard. Is that my drinking problem got worse and worse over the years. And
Mhm.
I just thought AA was, 12 step was the only way. And I was very resistant
Same.
to that. I didn't want to be labeled and I didn't think it was biblical, you know.
Exactly.
Even the National Institutes of Health have taken away that term alcoholic and now they use
Mhm.
alcohol use disorder. But there are plenty of people on a spectrum or on a road that is a dangerous, slippery slope.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I love the fact that people are coming out like you and me that are that bridge to getting them over that hump and seeing things maybe that they hadn't seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, why What is predominantly your experience? And I ask all these questions so we
Yeah.
compare our answers. But what is predominantly your experience for why people drink?
I have found with the clients that I've served is one, they're a lot like me. So maybe they might be in a toxic relationship and they may be using alcohol to cope. But I find generally speaking, anxiety and social settings. So a lot of people struggle with that social anxiety. A lot of people struggle with really just being themselves without alcohol around people. And I would say that's probably one of the main things is that identity issue that's kind of going on, and then just really just trying to cope with, mental health issues with alcohol.
Yeah, bingo. I couldn't have said it better. And
Yeah.
I know you coach women, but I've coached both men and women. And
Mhm.
it starts with the social acceptance of an addictive substance.
Yeah,
Um, And, whether you're a man or woman, I started my coaching in at the executive level, and there's a lot of pressure. Well, there's pressure, from the top levels all the way down.
right.
Society is just throwing stressful situations at us all the time. But the thing is, when you originally use it, it does solve for stress, right?
It
It
does.
does
Yep.
make it go away. But the problem is when you live a stressful life every day and then you start using it because it worked,
Mhm.
you eventually need more and more of it to work. Um, this concept of anxiety, right? We drink it to get rid of anxiety, and all it does is create
Fuel to
anxiety,
the fire. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And sleep, right?
Mhm.
If you don't have enough sleep, what happens? You're anxious.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It does so many things. Yeah, and I'm actually somebody that used to, really struggle with anxiety too, and when I was, at the peak of my binge drinking, oh my gosh, like it was horrible to the point where I was even going to the emergency room because I like my lips would turn blue, like it was just I was just having panic attacks. But I wouldn't
Wow.
have those when I was sober.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Just putting it aside. I just the lies embedded.
Yes.
And so I think anxiety, you're right. And then toxic relationships, I
Yes.
definitely have that, in my background. What was the third thing? Anxiety, toxic relationships. Just because
Yeah.
it's the
Social
norm,
setting.
social
Yeah.
situations.
Mhm.
Yeah, and people, like you're right, people that use it because they don't think who they are is enough, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
they use it to create a little bit of, um, confidence in themselves.
Yeah.
And
That liquid courage. Yeah, I've been there.
yeah, and for those who get caught in it, I don't know that the courage is worth it. Like, yeah,
Exactly. Is like that's where you have to ask yourself, is it really worth, the extra anxiety and the depression and even the broken relationships or the arguments that have it happen, you know? It's just yeah, that's something you have to weigh.
yeah, yeah. So this is fun. This is my favorite part, but I can't wait to hear your answer.
Yeah.
What is it that you see in people as you coach them and watch
Mhm.
their transition over time?
Yeah, I feel like, gosh, the biggest thing that I see first is really that's really rewarding to me, honestly, is the mindset shift. So a lot of people that come to me, they feel like they just need to focus on counting days. They feel like they just need to focus on not drinking. And so when we get to have these conversations in coaching and I get to help them shift their perspective from, okay, let's shift from lack to actually let's look at the life that you actually want to create. Let's look at actually being aligned with Christ. Let's actually look at your identity in Christ. Like, what does that look like? What does that woman look like? And how can we start creating that life? And so, whenever I have this conversation with my clients, it's like a weight has been lifted. And that is always so cool to see because I feel like so many people are just trying to have enough willpower. They're trying to just white knuckle through it, or they're trying to live on this spectrum of perfection, right? And of course, I'm not condoning drinking, but let's be honest, nobody's process is linear, right? And I know I made multiple mistakes when I was first on my sobriety journey. And, the clients that come to me, they make mistakes too. And so just seeing that shift, like even just in their body language and just even hearing them say, wow, I never looked at it that way. And I can tell you, gosh, it is just so rewarding because from that point on, it's like they're able to put down the booze. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but it looks so much different than what they looked like even 2 weeks ago,
Right.
So
Well,
that's one of
and
the biggest shifts.
I think that is the direction of the industry. It's more
Mhm.
cognitive therapy as a before years ago when AA was created, it was a disease that could
Mhm.
not be dealt with. You were going to live with this for the rest of your life. And as far as they knew back then, that was the case. And so that's why a lot of the languaging, like you're a drunk, you're going to be a drunk forever, you're in recovery forever,
Yes.
right? But God tells us that we can renew our minds, right? And
Yes.
that's the science of supporting it. So what you're doing is helping people shift from this victimhood, which
Mm.
we really do feel victim to it when we're in the midst of it. And so
Yes.
that's, you and I are just trying to give people hope, but see, like,
Mhm.
who are you created to be? What's
Mhm.
possible? It is
Yeah.
fun to watch people make that shift.
Absolutely. It's so rewarding and it's I don't know, it's just so cool. I love it every time.
It's a better way to be addicted to life, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah. I love that.
How about physically? What have you seen with people that make, that change,
Mhm.
physically? Because I've noticed a few common things.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing for a lot of people is they'll start to focus more so on their health. They'll start working out, they'll start, getting outside more and just even just doing things that they weren't able to do because they were hungover and didn't have a lot of energy when they were drinking. But even something awesome that I noticed too is people just have a glow. Like, and maybe it's that Holy Spirit glow, maybe it's that sober glow, maybe it's both, right? But they just have a glow, their eyes brighten up, and they just have so much more energy. And even things like you talked about, like sleep, right? They have better sleep. The anxiety goes down. The depression that maybe they were feeling goes down. And so, really, so many physical benefits happen. Some people start losing weight, because they're not having all those sugary drinks. So, I feel like I can literally go on, but those are probably the main things that I see. And I feel like the biggest ones are, the mental health aspect for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I physically, like from the beginning, and just their whole, is it countenance, like their
Mhm.
sadness, their struggle, and
Yes.
then like, oh my gosh, and they come in excited to tell you what happened or what,
Yes.
it's absolutely incredible. And I don't know, maybe because your clients are younger, but I'm curious
Mhm.
if you see this because I see it a lot. The older people get, and that is that readiness that there's something in their complexion that
Mhm.
completely changes as well. In addition, the puffiness,
Oh, the inflammation. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely notice that in my clients too. And yeah, in the range of clients I have anywhere, from 30 to even I have a client that's like in her 50s. And so, I mean, I feel like I see that with all of them. It's like, wow. And I think it goes back to like that weight loss, but also like alcohol, it causes inflammation in the body. So I think when you see that, it's just awesome how quickly it leaves.
Yeah, the
I mean, it's a
face
poison.
puffiness is
Yeah.
one of the first things to go, and then the red, maybe cheeks or,
Mhm.
uh,
Absolutely.
spots, and then, the smiles on the face. It's just
Yeah, it's just they're just more brighter and more alive, and it just reminds me of, what God says in his word, how he literally takes us from death to life, and we get to see that as coaches, like front and center, which is amazing.
yeah, yeah. And one of the things, I just posted about, it was no, I forgot where I was. I think it was in Romans, and,
Mhm,
it was about once we accept Christ, we have this peace and joy
mhm,
from the promises that he gives. But where is that peace and joy in our drinking? We have God.
mhm,
He hasn't stepped away from us. His promises aren't any different.
mhm.
Why do we not have joy and peace?
Yeah.
Because we've turned away from him. He hasn't turned away from us, right?
Yeah, exactly. When we reach for alcohol, I mean, really, it's just a counterfeit. Right?
Mm.
It's just a counterfeit peace, it's a counterfeit comfort, and kinda like we talked about earlier, it's like that initial drink, you may feel a little better, but then it's not it's something that fizzles out, right? That happiness, that little bit of joy, that little bit of anxiety relief, it just fizzles out, but with Jesus and obviously doing the work, the practical work, you can access that all the time without a substance.
Joy and peace despite circumstances. That's what you
Exactly.
hear. I think that's the witness that, Christians have. That is the draw because they can be
Mhm.
going through horrible, horrible circumstances, but their reliance is on Christ. And I think that's
Yes.
so
So
wonderful.
powerful. Yeah.
Um, Here's kind of a big one.
Mhm,
I know that you and we did talk about this a little bit beforehand,
mhm.
but people's resistance to paying for coaching.
Oh
What?
gosh. Yeah,
Crazy, right?
it is.
Can you talk about your experience? And I'm sure I'll
Yeah,
supplement or agree.
absolutely. So I feel like, gosh, honestly, in the Christian space, I feel like I get the most resistance because 'cause I've worked with other people that are not necessarily believers too, and they're so much quicker to invest, and I think it's so funny, but I think for me, my experience has been a lot of Christians, I guess, assume that our services should be for free, and Which doesn't make sense to me because like we said, it's like we have to eat, right? We have to provide for ourselves and so forth. And so that's probably been the biggest thing that I've seen in the Christian world. Like even, one of my biggest platforms is TikTok. And I always have people, they're like, why are you charging? You're not doing the work of the Lord. You're a false this and that. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm really not. But okay.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So that's been my experience, like, with it as a whole, and then I would say, just individually, I think a lot of people just have a lot of fear of the unknown, and they have a fear of, "Oh my gosh, if I step into mentorship or I step into coaching, that has to mean that I'm an alcoholic, that has to mean that I'm weak or this or that," when really it's not, and so, that's been my experience a lot too, where it's just like that fear, and that was my experience too, where I was like, "Well, man, if I need to get help with my drinking, then clearly there's something wrong with me. And clearly I'm this or that. And it's just that keeps us stuck in our own cycles as well.
Yeah, I resonate with the Christian thing
Mhm.
somewhat. I although I have not had that pushback, but I have heard people say, like, why shouldn't it be free?
Right.
Um, but there are plenty of people that you listen to on the radio. Our pastors are paid, our staff is paid. You cannot keep lights on and feed your
Right.
family.
Yep.
And there is expertise, Christian counselors. You pay for Christian counseling, Christian
Yes.
coaches, and that's definitely one. Oh boy, did you hit upon a good one when you said fear.
Mm.
I wonder if it isn't fear of failing, or
Oh, yeah.
maybe fear of being accountable.
Mhm.
Um, but remember, when you're in the midst of it, your heart's desire is to change something. And the likelihood, depending on where you are, but the likelihood of you being successful without some kind of support system, accountability, you
Mhm.
know, um, it's not zero because I wrote a devotional and plenty of people are successful. I wonder though if it's for the long term. Same thing, right?
Right. Right.
Is it for the long term? And what shifts the long term narrative about your
Mhm.
relationship with alcohol? Here's the other thing. Again, when I started, I went to a secular coaching program for myself, and
Mhm.
I paid, wait for it, like $5,500
Mm.
for
Yeah.
90 days. And I was retired. I wasn't making income, but
Mhm.
I really wanted to see something different.
Yep.
And paying that money and looking back today, I couldn't have made a better investment,
So
right?
worth it's still paying you back.
Right. It's still paying me back. And here's what kills me that people are spending. I mean, it depends where you are and what you're doing, but if you're
Mhm.
young and you're going to bars, I don't know where you live, but I live in a place that wine is at least $12 a glass
Mhm.
when you go out. And then you have to add a tip, and then you maybe buy another drink for your friend, and then maybe you stop by on the way home to get extra food that you never would have eaten,
Yep.
right? People have laughed about drunk purchases.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
if you add up the the real amount of your drinking, whew, it is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yep.
There's no
Absolutely.
question. And then
Mhm.
what could you do with that money that you save? What's and what's the word? The opportunity cost. Like,
Mhm.
have you also seen through coaching people taking more risks in life or um being more successful at work? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, gosh, that's been something really awesome to watch too. I feel like most of the clients that come to me, they already have, a dream on their heart that God has kind of put on their heart. And, alcohol has really hindered them from really seeing clearly and really just getting, that clarity from God too, right? Because when we're in that sin, that separates us from God. So it's kind of, it's harder to hear God. But yeah, I have clients that they started a coaching business. I have clients that started writing books. Right now, I'm working with a couple of clients. They're actually both writing books, and another woman is about to launch her coaching business, life coaching. And
Wow.
so it's wild to see it. It's so amazing to watch God work in their life, and the fact that I get to then mentor them through like that on the next level is so awesome. But yeah, absolutely, I've seen women just achieve so much more. I've seen, families be restored, marriages been restored. That's been really awesome to see too. So yeah, so many things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The marriages restored is just crazy. The
Mhm.
fights that we pick
Yeah.
when we desire alcohol or we don't have a filter. The
Right.
filter that
Yeah.
God gave us, right? Because
Yep.
if we're not engaged in our substance and we have this filter, maybe we want to say something really nasty,
Mhm.
but we have discernment. Like that won't lead to
Right.
anything, any result that I want. But
Yeah.
the substances remove the filter, and then, whew,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And then you just don't know where that's gonna go. You're like a loose cannon.
And what do you think? What are your thoughts on how people? I think you touched on it a little bit, but
Mhm.
maybe go deeper. How do people stay the course? Because this is something that people do over and over and over again. And what do you
Mhm.
believe are the key principles to wanting this direction versus
Mhm.
going back to where they were?
Yeah,
What
I
has
mean
to be what has to be in place?
yeah. I mean, I feel, what I've seen in my experience with my clients and also with my own story is one, the obvious one, which is keeping God first, right? Staying focused on that, staying focused on life, and really staying in alignment with Him. And then I would say the second thing is because I know, like you said, it's so easy for us to go back to what we're doing, right? It's so easy for us to default on the way that we were coping. I feel like being plugged into mentorship is always going to be so helpful. And obviously, everybody's in a different space. I have some people where they just need mentorship for 12 weeks, and that's just what they needed to kind of like break out of that threshold, and they're fine with that. But then there's some people where they really struggle with those limiting beliefs, right? And with those people, I would say, like, it really comes down to really, like you said, like, renewing your mind, right? Doing that deeper work beyond just being like, "Okay, well, I have one more sober day on my calendar," right? And so I feel like across
Yeah.
the board, like, we have to do that deeper work. And the Holy Spirit will reveal that to you as you continue to walk along your sober journey. But I would say, yeah, focus on Jesus and go beyond the bottle and doing that work and just beyond counting days for sure. I feel like I could go off on many tangents, but I'm
No,
holding
I
myself
you
back.
you hit on something that really, because I was never in the 12-step system or the AA
Mhm,
system, but what is interesting to me, I am a usher at church, and somebody knew I wrote a devotional and he about drinking, and he literally pulled out of his pocket a 35-year chip.
mm,
And I mean, he's a good man, like, I'm
yeah,
not, but, it's more that's how we measure ourselves,
right.
and that is not how God measures us, right?
Mhm,
You could
exactly.
have just stopped for 12 weeks, and
Mhm.
it's who you're becoming and who God is creating you to be, and what is his purpose for your life, and how, you know what I mean? It's so
Yeah,
much
absolutely.
more.
Yeah, and one thing that I always say too, it's like you could be sober for 6 months or 6 years, and somebody that's sober for 6 years maybe didn't do the work that you did within 6 months, and they're not really emotionally, mature in that area or emotionally sober. So it could be, just kinda tied into what you just said, like that deeper work, it's so important.
Well, and I it is, and what you just said just keyed something in for me in terms of our relationship with God because He's
Mhm.
not counting.
Right.
He's not counting with us how many days.
Mhm.
He's he's counting who we are and how we are creating light and opportunity for others. That's what he sees in you. That he sees
Mhm.
a gift that you might be using to it
Absolutely.
doesn't matter if it's singing or painting or you know what I mean?
Yep.
It doesn't matter. The days don't matter. It's the mindset. And as just like you said, I don't think this is possible. Well, it is possible, but I think it's a minority without God.
Mhm.
And even the National Institutes of Health, they had a study that I saw. You are 84% more likely to be successful when God is involved in your journey.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So important.
it's crazy. And do you have group coaching and um one-on-one coaching?
I do. Yeah. So I actually just opened up a membership. So this is for, mainly for people that kind of just want to get their toes wet, or it's a space where people can go to maintain their sobriety. So I just really wanted to have a space for them with that. So that's a group aspect. And I also will do sober challenges throughout the year as well, which, oh my gosh, like God really shows up in those. Those are one of my favorite things to do. And then yes, I have one-on-one mentorships as well. So I have short mentorships that are like 6 weeks for, again, just kind of meeting people where they're at, and then I have the 12-week mentorship as well. And then,
Yeah.
typically people will go with me longer. Like, I have a client, she's been with me for 2 years, and I've been able to walk with her through her sobriety journey, and then now walking with her through, really stepping into her purpose, so.
Yeah, and I think it's a good time to reflect on what's the difference between a coach and a counselor. And a
Mm,
lot of times we as coaches need to understand that that this is beyond us. It's counseling that's necessary.
yeah,
But counseling is more for people that have something in their past that
right.
they're working on dealing with. Coaches are used exactly like you said to be accountability partners, to
Right.
partner with you in seeing something new and seeing something different and helping you create that vision and walking with you through these steps. And
Yes.
that's why you would engage a coach because I want to see something more. And maybe you don't have the expertise to
Mhm.
see something more, right? I had to go through, oh my goodness, 3 years of counseling.
Yeah.
Um, and all the while I was drinking, by the way. And
Mhm.
so I was healing, but I was stuck. And I did not realize when I quit drinking, I called my counselor and said, "Guess what? I do not need you anymore." I didn't realize that. Well, maybe I did and I wasn't
Yeah.
being honest with myself. But the missing link to me being completely healed was really the alcohol. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing once you take that away, how many doors open from that, which, we've talked about so much already, but it's just so awesome.
Yeah, I've had people that raises if you're on a commission
Mhm.
and you wanna make some more money, I this is something I've seen significantly, especially in real
Mhm.
estate, having some more clarity to how you deal with your clients, how you deal with the problem,
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
creates ultimately a bigger win, and that's what we're talking about is that opportunity cost.
exactly. Yeah.
Before we sign off, do you think
Mhm.
there's anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers about, what they need to know to be prepared for the journey, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to be prepared for the journey, I would say to be patient with yourself.
Mm,
Again, like, kind of going back to that perfection scale, just allow yourself to go through the process, allow God to do the work that he's going to do, and just know that it's okay to ask for support, however that looks like for you. It doesn't make you less than, it actually makes you really brave. actually makes you really brave and wanting something new and wanting something different. And that's also you taking a big leap of faith and again, like allowing God to fill in those gaps. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, we're going to put everything about you and how to get in touch with you in our show notes. And
Okay.
yeah, and we'll just continue hoping to inspire others to, I love that, have patience with themselves. This is
Mhm.
part of the process, is gaining this awareness of the definition of insanity, for lack of a better word,
Right. Doing the same thing over and over again.
and expecting a different result.
Mhm.
And hopefully, we've helped people kind of get more ready, understand the value of coaching, and understand what hope there is
Yeah.
for something new in the future. So,
Absolutely.
thank you for being here and having this discussion with me.
Yes, thank you for having me.